I lost $365,000 in a single night. Not over months. Not gradually. One night, I went to bed with my retirement secure and woke up to find my bank account had been drained to $17.43. The woman sleeping next to me had done it, and I'd given her the access to do it. I'm 71 years old now. I taught primary school for 42 years in Brisbane. I was never rich, but I was careful. I saved. I lived modestly. My wife Margaret and I bought our house in 1981 and paid it off by 1998. We had plans. We were going to travel once I retired, see Europe, maybe take a cruise to Alaska, all those things you tell yourself you'll do when you finally have time. Margaret died 3 months after I retired. Pancreatic cancer. They found it in March and she was gone by June. We never made it to Europe. We never took that cruise. I spent my first year of retirement sitting in our house in Ashgrove, looking at the empty chair where she used to read her books, wondering what the point of any of it had been. My daughter Lisa kept telling me I needed to get out, meet people, join a club. She meant well, but she didn't understand. When you've been married for 43 years, you don't just go join a lawn bowls club and start over. That's not how it works. At least, that's what I told myself. Then my old colleague Barry came back from Thailand. He'd been going there every winter for 5 years, staying in Pattaya, living like a king on his pension. He kept showing me photos on his phone, beautiful beaches, cheap beer, smiling people. He said a man could live very well there on a fraction of what it cost in Brisbane. He said I should come with him next time, just for a holiday, see what I thought. I didn't go with Barry. I went alone. I think part of me wanted to prove to Lisa that I was fine, that I could do things on my own. I booked 2 weeks at a hotel in Bangkok in September 2019. I'd never been to Asia before. Margaret had always wanted to go to Japan, but Thailand had never been on our list. Maybe that's why it felt safe. It wasn't a place filled with memories of plans we'd never completed. Bangkok was overwhelming at first. The heat, the traffic, the noise. But there was something about it that woke me up. For the first time in 18 months, I felt like I was actually present in my life instead of just watching it happen. I walked around the city with no particular destination. I ate at street stalls. I took the SkyTrain to different neighborhoods just to see what was there. I felt alive. I met View on my 8th day in Bangkok. I was in Siam Paragon, the big shopping mall, completely lost trying to find my way back to the SkyTrain. I must have looked confused because she approached me and asked in English if I needed help. She worked at one of the cosmetics counters on the ground floor. She was on her break. She was beautiful. I know how that sounds. I know what people think when a 70-year-old man says a 24-year-old woman was beautiful. But it wasn't just her looks. It was the way she smiled, the way she seemed genuinely interested in helping me. She walked me all the way to the SkyTrain entrance, even though it was out of her way. She told me she hoped I enjoyed the rest of my holiday. I went back to that mall the next day. I told myself it was because I wanted to buy some gifts to take home for Lisa and her kids, but I knew why I was really there. View was at her counter. She recognized me. She seemed happy to see me. We talked for maybe 20 minutes between customers. She asked about Australia. She'd never been outside Thailand. She said it was her dream to travel one day, but working at the department store didn't pay enough to save anything meaningful. I came back again the day after that, and the day after that. On my last day in Bangkok, I asked if she'd like to have dinner with me. I expected her to say no. Why would a girl like that want to have dinner with someone like me? But she said yes. She said she finished work at 6. We went to a restaurant near the mall. Nothing fancy, just a place she knew that served good Thai food. She told me about her life. She was from a poor family in Isaan, the northeast region. She'd come to Bangkok when she was 19 to find work. She sent money home every month to help her parents and to pay for her younger brother and sister to stay in school. She lived in a tiny room she shared with 2 other girls from her village. She worked 6 days a week. I told her about Margaret, about teaching, about Brisbane, about how empty my life had felt since my wife died. I didn't mean to unload all of that on her. It just came out. She listened. Really listened. Not the polite listening people do when they're waiting for you to finish so they can talk. She asked questions. She touched my hand across the table when I talked about Margaret's last days. When I started to cry, right there in the restaurant like a foolish old man, she didn't look away. She didn't seem embarrassed. She just held my hand. I went back to Australia the next morning. I thought about View the entire flight home. I thought about her smile, the way she'd listened, the way she'd made me feel like maybe I wasn't just invisible, like maybe there was still something in me worth paying attention to. I messaged her on Facebook when I got home. We started talking every day, just messages at first, then video calls. She'd call me after she finished work, which was morning for me. I'd make my coffee and we'd talk for an hour. She told me about her day, about difficult customers, about her roommates, about her family back in Isaan. I told her about my walks around Ashgrove, about dinner with Lisa and her family, about how much I missed having someone to talk to. 3 months later, I went back to Bangkok. I stayed for a month that time. View took time off work to spend with me. We went to the beach at Hua Hin. We visited temples. We ate at street markets. She showed me her Bangkok, not the tourist version. She introduced me to her friends. They were all young, all Thai, and I was this old Australian man who didn't speak the language, but they were kind to me. They included me. Because of View, I belonged. On that trip, View told me about her family situation. Her father had been sick, diabetes, complications. He needed medication that cost money they didn't have. Her younger sister was smart, could maybe get into university, but they couldn't afford the fees. Her brother had dropped out of school at 15 to work in the rice fields because the family needed the income. She cried when she told me this. She said she felt like she was failing them. She worked so hard, but it was never enough. I gave her 50,000 baht, about 2,000 Australian dollars. I told her to use it for her father's medication and her sister's school fees. She refused at first. She said it was too much. She said she couldn't accept it, but I insisted. I told her I had more money than I needed. I told her it made me happy to help. That was true. It did make me happy. For the first time since Margaret died, I felt like I had a purpose. I could help this beautiful young woman and her family. I could make a difference in their lives. She cried when she accepted the money. She hugged me so tight. She said I was the kindest man she'd ever met. She said her family would be so grateful. She said she didn't know how to thank me. I went back to Australia after that month, but this time felt different. I wasn't going home to an empty house. I was going home knowing I'd be back. View, and I talked about me moving to Bangkok. She said she'd help me find an apartment. She said we could be together properly, not just stolen weeks here and there. She said she'd take care of me. Lisa wasn't happy when I told her my plans. She said I was being reckless. She said I barely knew this girl. She said, what did I really know about her, or her family, or her intentions? She asked if I'd given her money. I told her it wasn't like that. I told her View wasn't like that. I told her she was just worried because she'd seen her family struggling, and I'd helped. Lisa said that's exactly what she was worried about. We fought about it. Really fought. In a way Lisa and I never had before. She said I was being stupid. She said I was thinking with something other than my brain. She actually said that to me. Her own father. I told her I was a grown man who could make my own decisions. I told her just because she couldn't understand why a young woman might genuinely care about me didn't mean it wasn't real. I told her maybe she was jealous that I'd found happiness again and she wanted me to stay miserable like I'd been for the past 2 years. I regret saying that now. I regret all of it. She was trying to protect me. She was trying to be a good daughter. I was too stubborn and too in love to listen. I moved to Bangkok in June 2020. The pandemic had complicated things, but I managed to get a retirement visa sorted. I found a nice apartment in On Nut, a neighborhood View had recommended. 2 bedrooms, a balcony, a pool in the building. The rent was 17,000 baht a month, about 700 Australian dollars. Back in Brisbane, I'd been paying that much per week for my house. Everything in Thailand felt like such incredible value. View moved in with me a week after I arrived. Her roommates were happy for her. She quit her job at the department store. She said she wanted to focus on taking care of me, making our home nice, learning to cook Australian food. I told her she didn't need to quit her job, but she said she wanted to. She said this was her chance for a better life. She said I'd given that to her. Those first few months were wonderful. We settled into a routine. She'd wake up early and go to the market to buy fresh ingredients for breakfast. She'd cook for me. Thai food mostly, but she tried to make things she thought I'd like. Stir fries with less chili, soups that weren't too spicy. She'd take Thai language lessons in the afternoon while I read or walked around the neighborhood. In the evenings, we'd watch movies, or she'd teach me Thai phrases, simple ones. How to order food, how to say thank you, how to tell a taxi driver where I wanted to go. We went to visit her family in Isaan that August. It was a 6-hour bus ride to her village. The poverty was shocking. Not slum poverty like you see on television, but rural poverty. Dirt roads, houses made of wood and corrugated iron, no air conditioning, chickens and dogs running around. Her family's house was small, 2 rooms. Her parents, her brother, her sister, and her grandmother all lived there. They welcomed me like I was royalty. They killed a chicken for dinner. They'd bought beer specifically because View had told them Australians liked beer. They didn't speak any English and I didn't speak Thai, so View translated everything. Her father thanked me for helping with his medication. Her sister thanked me for the money that had kept her in school. Her mother cried and hugged me and said something View translated as, "You are a good man. You take care of my daughter." I felt like a hero. I felt like I'd found my purpose. These people needed help and I could provide it. What good was my retirement money doing sitting in a bank in Australia when it could change lives here? Before we left the village, View's father took me aside. View translated. He said the family was in debt. The rice harvest had been bad 2 years running. They'd borrowed money from a local lender to buy seed and fertilizer. The interest was crippling them. They owed 300,000 baht, about 12,000 Australian dollars. If they couldn't pay, they might lose their land. The land had been in the family for 3 generations. I gave them the money. I transferred it to View and she handled getting it to her father. She said it was better that way because she knew how to deal with the money lender. I didn't ask questions. I trusted her. She'd never given me a reason not to trust her. Her family was so grateful. Her father said he'd pay me back. I told him not to worry about it. I told him family helps family. View cried on the bus ride back to Bangkok. Happy tears, she said. She said I'd saved her family. She said she'd never forget what I'd done. She said she wanted to marry me. She wanted to be my wife properly. Not just my girlfriend. She wanted everyone to know that I was her husband and she was my wife. We got married 2 months later. Small ceremony, just us and a few of her friends. We registered it at the district office. I wore a nice shirt. She wore a traditional Thai dress. We took photos. She posted them on Facebook with a long caption in Thai that she said was about how lucky she was to have found me. Lisa didn't come to the wedding. She didn't even know about it until I told her afterwards. She was hurt. She was angry. She said I was making a huge mistake. She said I was going to regret it. I told her she needed to be happy for me or we couldn't talk anymore. She chose not to talk. We didn't speak for 4 months after that. After the wedding, View said we should open a joint bank account for household expenses, she said, so she could pay bills and buy groceries without always having to ask me for money. She said it would be easier. She said married couples in Thailand always had joint accounts. She said it showed trust. I should have questioned that. I should have asked someone. I should have done literally anything other than just believe her. But I didn't. I went to Bangkok Bank and opened a joint account. I transferred $100,000 Australian into it, about 2.5 million baht. View came with me. The bank officer explained the account in Thai to View. She signed the forms. I signed the forms. We both had ATM cards. We both had online access. Equal access. That's what the bank officer said in English. Equal access. View seemed so happy about the joint account. She said it made her feel like we were really partners. She said it made her feel secure. She said she'd never had any financial security in her life, and now she did because of me. She kissed me right there in the bank. The bank officer smiled. Life continued normally for a few weeks after that. View still cooked breakfast. She still took care of the apartment. She still seemed happy. But small things changed. She spent more time on her phone. She went out more often to meet friends. She said she needed to maintain her social life, couldn't just be with me all the time. I understood that. I didn't want to be one of those possessive old men who controlled their young wives. She started buying things, expensive things, a new phone, designer handbags, gold jewelry. When I asked about it, she said she was using her own money. I didn't know she had her own money since she wasn't working, but I didn't push it. Then she said she'd been saving from when she worked at the department store. That didn't make sense because she'd been sending all her money to her family. But I didn't say that. I didn't want to accuse her of lying. In November, her brother needed money for a motorcycle. View said he'd gotten a job at a factory in Korat, but he couldn't get there without transportation. The motorcycle cost 60,000 baht, about 2,400 Australian dollars. She asked if we could help. I said, of course. I transferred the money to her. She said her family was so grateful. 2 weeks later, her sister needed money for university entrance exam preparation classes. 30,000 baht. I sent it. The week after that, her grandmother needed cataract surgery. 50,000 baht. I sent it. Then her cousin's shop had flooded and needed repairs. 40,000 baht. Then her aunt needed money for her daughter's wedding. 35,000 baht. Every request came with a story. Every story came with tears. Every time, View thanked me. Every time, she said this was the last time. Every time, her family sent messages of gratitude through her phone. I never spoke to them directly. View translated everything. I started to feel uneasy, not suspicious exactly, but uneasy. The requests were coming so frequently. I checked our joint account one day in December. We were down to $85,000 from the original 100,000. I'd been transferring money in from my Australian account to cover the requests, but it was adding up faster than I'd expected. When I mentioned it to View, she got upset. She said I was making her feel bad for her family being poor. She said if I didn't want to help anymore, I should just say so. She said she'd always been poor and she'd survive being poor again. I apologized. I felt terrible. I told her I wasn't complaining. I told her, of course, we'd keep helping her family. She cried and hugged me and said I was the best husband. She said she was sorry for getting emotional. She said it was just hard because she felt caught between her family and me. Christmas came and went. We didn't celebrate much. View wasn't Christian and I wasn't feeling particularly festive anyway. Lisa sent me a message saying Merry Christmas. I replied. She asked how I was. I said I was fine. She asked about View. I said View was fine. That was the whole conversation. In January 2021, View told me her family wanted to start a small business, a shop selling food and drinks in the village. It would provide income for the whole family. Her brother could run it. Her sister could help when she wasn't at school. Her parents could finally stop working in the fields. It would cost 350,000 baht to get started, about 14,000 Australian dollars. The shop space, the equipment, the initial inventory, the licenses. I hesitated. That was a lot of money. View saw me hesitating. She said I didn't have to decide right away. She said she understood it was a big investment. She said maybe her family would just have to keep struggling. She said maybe her sister would have to drop out of school after all to help in the rice fields. She didn't say it in a manipulative way. She just said it sadly, like she was accepting an unfortunate reality. I gave her the money. I transferred it from my Australian account into the joint account, and then View transferred it to her family. She said they'd pay me back once the shop was profitable. She said it would take time, but they'd do it. I told her not to worry about it. I told her I was happy to invest in her family's future. The shop never materialized. Or if it did, I never saw any evidence of it. When I asked View about it a few weeks later, she said there'd been delays with the permits. When I asked again in February, she said the landlord had changed his mind about the space. When I asked in March, she got angry. She said I didn't trust her family. She said I thought they were scamming me. She said if that's what I thought, maybe I should just say it directly instead of asking passive-aggressive questions about the shop. I dropped it. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to believe what part of me was starting to suspect. Our joint account was down to 60,000 Australian dollars by April. I'd been transferring more money in, but the requests from View's family kept coming. I started to feel less like a generous husband and more like an ATM machine. But I didn't say anything. I was afraid of what saying something might mean. I was afraid it might mean Lisa had been right all along. View started staying out late. She said she was with friends. She said she needed to maintain her social life. Sometimes, she didn't come home until 2 or 3 in the morning. When I asked where she'd been, she said bars, clubs, places her friends liked to go. When I asked why she didn't invite me, she laughed. Not cruelly, but like the question was absurd. She said those places weren't for old men. She said I wouldn't enjoy them. She said I should be happy she came home to me at the end of the night. I wasn't happy. I was miserable, but I didn't know what to do about it. I'd moved to Thailand for her. I'd married her. I'd given her family tens of thousands of dollars. I'd isolated myself from my own daughter for her. If I admitted it was a mistake, what did that leave me with? A 71-year-old man alone in a foreign country with no friends and a daughter who'd warned me this exact thing would happen? On May 18th, 2021, View told me she wanted to visit her family for a week. I asked if I should come with her. She said no, that she wanted to spend time with just her family. She said I'd been so generous, and she wanted to bring them gifts and spend quality time without having to translate everything. I understood. Or I told myself I understood. She left on a Tuesday morning. That night, I couldn't sleep. It wasn't anything specific, just a feeling. At around 2 in the morning, I decided to check our joint bank account. I don't know why. Maybe I was hoping to see that we had more money than I thought. Maybe I was hoping to see evidence that View had been saving some of the money I'd been giving her. Maybe I was just bored and anxious and checking the bank account was something to do. I logged into the online banking app on my phone. I navigated to the joint account. The screen loaded. I stared at the number for what felt like a very long time, but was probably only seconds. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. It didn't make sense. There must have been an error. The app must have glitched. I closed it and opened it again. The number didn't change. The account balance was $17.43. 43 cents. From $60,000 to $17.43. $365,000 gone. Not 60. 365. Because apparently, View had been transferring money into the account from my Australian account. I hadn't set up alerts. I hadn't been paying attention. She'd had my Australian online banking details because I'd asked her to help me make a transfer once and I dictated the password to her. I'd never changed it afterwards. Why would I? I trusted my wife. I checked the transaction history. One withdrawal. Made at 11:47 p.m. on May 18th. $365,852.57. Transferred to a Thai bank account I didn't recognize. The entire balance of the joint account and everything that had been left in my Australian account. Gone. In one transaction, while I was sleeping in our apartment, my wife had taken everything I had. I called her immediately. It rang through to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I called 15 times in a row. Voicemail every time. I sent messages on Facebook, online, on WhatsApp. Nothing. I sent an email. Nothing. I tried to think rationally. Maybe she hadn't done it. Maybe someone had hacked the account. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe there was an explanation. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the balcony of our apartment watching the sun come up over Bangkok, holding my phone, waiting for it to ring. It didn't ring. By 8 a.m., I accepted that View wasn't going to call me back. I got dressed and went to the Bangkok bank branch where we'd opened the joint account. The bank officer I spoke with was professional and sympathetic. She reviewed the transaction. She confirmed it had been initiated through the online banking app using View's login credentials. She confirmed the receiving account was registered to a Thai national named Wanita Srisuk. I didn't recognize the name. The bank officer said there was nothing they could do. The transaction was legitimate. Both account holders had equal access. View had every legal right to withdraw the full balance. I asked if I could get the money back. She said I'd need to file a police report and potentially take legal action against View. She said Thai law in these cases was complicated, especially when the accounts were joint and both parties had authorized access. She said I should consult a lawyer. She said she was sorry. I went to the tourist police. I filed a report. The officer taking my statement was kind, but not optimistic. He said cases like mine were common. He said when foreigners gave Thai nationals access to their bank accounts and then the money disappeared, it was very difficult to recover. He said I could try to hire a lawyer to sue View, but it would be expensive and the outcome was uncertain. He said the money had probably already been moved through multiple accounts and was effectively untraceable. He said he was sorry. I went back to the apartment. I sat on the couch where View and I had watched movies together. I looked at the kitchen where she'd cooked breakfast for me. I looked at the bedroom where we'd slept next to each other. I felt completely numb. Not angry yet, not sad yet, just numb. My brain had shut down some protective circuit to prevent me from feeling the full weight of what had happened. View's things were still in the apartment, her clothes in the closet, her makeup in the bathroom, her phone charger on the bedside table. It was like she'd just stepped out for a moment and would be back any time, except she wouldn't be back. I knew she wouldn't be back. She had my money. She didn't need me anymore. I started checking her social media. Her Facebook was still active. She'd posted a photo that morning from what looked like a resort, not her village, a resort. She was smiling, wearing a new dress I'd never seen before. The caption was in Thai. I used Google Translate. It said something like, "New beginnings. So blessed." The comments were all in Thai. People congratulating her. People saying she deserved happiness. People using emoji hearts. I scrolled through her friends list. I recognized some of the names from when she'd introduced me to people. I clicked on a few profiles. Several of them had posted photos recently from the same resort where View had posted from. They were all there together, having a party, celebrating something, celebrating my money, I realized, celebrating what they'd taken from me. I found a profile that looked like it might be a boyfriend. His name was Anucha, young guy, maybe late 20s. Lots of photos of motorcycles and gym selfies. I scrolled through his photos. There were several of him with View, recent ones, from the past few months, while she'd been living with me, while she'd been my wife. They looked close, more than friends. There was one from April, at a beach, his arm around her waist, her leaning into him, both of them smiling. I wanted to vomit. I closed the app. I threw my phone across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor. I hoped I'd broken it. I hadn't. I walked over and picked it up. The screen was fine. I called Lisa. It was late in Brisbane, but I didn't care. She answered on the third ring. Her voice was foggy with sleep. She said hello. I said I needed help. My voice cracked when I said it. She was instantly awake. She asked what was wrong. I told her everything. The whole pathetic story, the joint account, the requests for money, View disappearing with everything I had. I told her she'd been right. I told her I'd been stupid. I told her I was sorry. Lisa didn't say I told you so. She just asked if I was safe. I said yes. She asked if I had any money left at all. I said I had about $3,000 in a different account View hadn't known about. My emergency fund that I'd kept separate. It was enough to survive for a couple months if I was careful. Maybe enough to buy a plane ticket home. Lisa said to come home. She said to come home right now. She said she'd buy me a ticket if I needed her to. I said I didn't know. I said I needed to think. She said there was nothing to think about. She said View was gone. She said the money was gone. She said I needed to come home. I said I'd call her back. She made me promise to call her back. I promised. I didn't call her back for 3 days. I stayed in the apartment. I barely ate. I kept checking View's Facebook, torturing myself with photos of her at the resort, at restaurants, shopping, smiling, living her best life with my money. I kept checking the bank account, hoping somehow the money would reappear. It didn't. I filed a complaint with the Australian embassy. They were polite but unhelpful. They said it was a civil matter between me and my wife. They said they couldn't intervene in domestic financial disputes. They said I could contact a lawyer if I wanted to pursue legal action. I did contact a lawyer, an Australian expat who specialized in cases like mine. He said he could take my case, but it would cost at least $10,000 in legal fees with no guarantee of recovery. He said even if we won a judgment, enforcing it would be nearly impossible if View had moved the money out of her accounts. He said most of his clients in similar situations eventually just gave up because the cost of fighting exceeded any realistic chance of recovery. He said he was sorry. On the 4th day, I packed View's things into garbage bags and put them outside the apartment door. I changed the locks. Not that it mattered. She wasn't coming back. But doing it made me feel slightly less powerless. I scrubbed the apartment clean. I washed the sheets. I threw out the Thai ingredients she'd kept in the kitchen. I deleted every photo of her from my phone. I blocked her on all social media. I deleted her phone number. I wanted to erase her. I wanted to erase the past 9 months. I wanted to go back to September 2019 and not walk into that mall. I wanted to stay in Brisbane being lonely and safe, instead of being lonely and destroyed in Bangkok. I called Lisa back. I told her I'd come home. She started crying. She said thank you. She said she'd been so worried. She said she loved me. I said I loved her too. She bought me a ticket for the following week. I spent that week closing down my life in Bangkok. I ended the lease on the apartment, losing my deposit because I was breaking the contract early. I sold what furniture I'd bought. I donated View's clothes to a charity shop. I filed final paperwork with the tourist police, who still hadn't made any progress on my case and probably never would. The night before my flight, I sat on the empty floor of the empty apartment and cried properly for the first time since it had happened. Not because of the money, though the money was devastating. Not because of View, though the betrayal was crushing. I cried because I'd been so stupid. I cried because Lisa had warned me and I hadn't listened. I cried because I'd given up my relationship with my daughter for a woman who'd been playing me from the very beginning. I cried because I was 71 years old and I'd have to start over with nothing. I cried because some part of me still loved View even though I knew everything between us had been a lie. I flew back to Brisbane in June 2021. Lisa picked me up from the airport. She hugged me for a long time in the arrivals hall. She didn't ask questions. She just took me home. I've been living with Lisa and her family for the past 5 years. I have a small room in their house. I help with the grandkids. I do odd jobs to contribute what I can. I live on the aged pension now. The money I'd saved for 42 years is gone. I'll never get it back. I'll never travel. I'll never own property again. I'll spend the rest of my life dependent on my daughter's generosity. I hired a private investigator in Thailand 6 months after I got back. Cost me $2,000 I couldn't really afford. He found View. She was living in Pattaya with Anucha, the boyfriend from Facebook. They'd bought a bar together, my bar, with my money. The investigator sent me photos. View looked happy, healthy, successful. She'd cut her hair short. She wore expensive clothes. She drove a nice car. She'd moved on. She was fine. I wasn't fine. I'm still not fine. I tried to move on. I tried dating briefly. Met a woman through a friend at church. Nice woman. Age appropriate. Australian. We went on 3 dates. On the 3rd date, She asked if I'd ever been married. I told her about Margaret. She asked if there'd been anyone since Margaret. I told her about View. I told her everything. I watched her face change as I talked. I watched sympathy turn to concern, turn to something that looked like fear. She said she had to leave early. She never returned my calls after that. I don't blame her. I wouldn't want to date me either. I'm the cautionary tale. I'm the stupid old man who fell for the young Thai woman and lost everything. I'm the punchline to a joke everyone's heard before. When Barry, my old colleague, the one who'd introduced me to Thailand, heard what happened, he stopped calling. The few friends I had left from my teaching days gradually stopped inviting me to things. I think they were embarrassed for me, or maybe they thought whatever I had was contagious. Lisa's friends sometimes ask me about Thailand. They do it carefully, like they're approaching a wounded animal. They say things like, "I hear Thailand is beautiful," or "I've always wanted to visit Bangkok." They never directly ask about View. They never ask how I lost my money, but I know they know. I can see it in their faces. That mix of pity and smugness. That there, but for the grace of God, go I satisfaction that it happened to me and not to them. I check View's Facebook sometimes. I know I shouldn't. I've blocked her, but I created a fake account just to look. She's still with Anucha. The bar looks successful. They travel. Beach trips. Shopping in Bangkok. They look like a normal couple. Maybe they are a normal couple now. Maybe what she and I had was the abnormal thing. Maybe I was never her husband. Maybe I was just a transaction that happened to take 9 months to complete. I think about what I would say to her if I could. I've written letters I never send, emails that sit in my drafts folder. Sometimes I imagine confronting her, asking her if any of it was real, asking her if she ever cared about me at all or if I was just a mark from the very first day we met in that mall. I imagine her answering honestly. I don't know which answer would be worse. If she said it was all fake from the start, that would destroy what few good memories I have left. If she said some of it was real, that would mean she'd cared about me and stolen from me anyway, which might be even more painful. The truth is, I'll never know. I'll never get answers. View is gone. The money is gone. That part of my life is gone. I'm 76 now. I have maybe 10 years left if I'm lucky. I'll spend them being careful with every dollar. I'll spend them helping Lisa raise her kids. I'll spend them being the grandfather who lives in the spare room and has nothing to pass on to his grandchildren because he gave it all to a stranger in Bangkok. People ask me sometimes what I learned. They want the neat lesson. They want the moral of the story. I tell them what they want to hear. I say don't mix love and money. I say protect yourself legally. I say listen to your family when they warn you. But the real lesson, the one I actually learned, is darker than that. The real lesson is that loneliness makes you stupid. The real lesson is that when you're desperate for connection, you'll believe anything. The real lesson is that there are people in the world who can smell desperation and they know exactly how to exploit it. View wasn't some criminal mastermind. She was a poor girl from Isaan who saw an opportunity and took it. Maybe she justified it to herself. Maybe she told herself I could afford it. Maybe she told herself rich Australians owe Pattaya something because of colonialism or global inequality or whatever rationalization helped her sleep at night. Or maybe she didn't justify it at all. Maybe she just saw a lonely old man with money and she took it because she could. I don't hate her. I wish I did. Hate would be cleaner. Hate would give me something to do with all this feeling. But I don't hate her. I'm just sad. Sad that I was so lonely I walked into an obvious trap. Sad that I ignored every warning sign because I wanted the fantasy more than I wanted the truth. Sad that I sacrificed my relationship with my daughter and my financial security for 9 months of feeling less alone. Sad that I'm 76 years old and I still don't understand how the world works. If you're reading this and you're thinking about doing what I did, just don't. I don't care how lonely you are. I don't care how beautiful she is. I don't care how much you trust her. Don't give someone you've known for less than a year access to your life savings. Don't move to a foreign country for someone who's young enough to be your granddaughter. Don't ignore your family when they tell you you're making a mistake. Just don't. But you probably will anyway. Because if you're lonely enough, if you're desperate enough, none of this will matter. You'll read my story and you'll think your situation is different. You'll think you found the one good one. You'll think you're smarter than I was. You won't be. You'll just be another lonely old man who got played. And in 5 years, you'll be writing something like this, hoping someone else might listen. They won't, because loneliness makes you stupid, and stupidity is expensive. I paid $365,000 to learn that. I hope you're smarter than I was. But you probably aren't.